a warm welcome to this special Beyond Nollywood conversation piece for the Eastern Nigerian Film Festival 2022. My name is Nadia Denton. I'm based in London and the founder and curator of the film collective Beyond Nollywood. I'm really pleased to be joined by the expert Nigerian film editor, Chuka Ejohr. Chuka has 17 years experience working on award-winning feature films, TV shows, drama series, documentaries, and commercials. He is regarded as one of the top film editors in Nigeria. Chuka presently owns Blink Studios, a company which provides post-production services. In 2020, Blink Studios became Netflix's first Nigerian post-production partner for the EMEA region. Chuka's films have won awards in Nigeria and internationally, most notably the Milkmaid, which was Nigeria's official submission for the Academy Award in 2021. Welcome, Chuka. Delighted that you're here with us today and looking forward to the career insights that you will share over the coming session. So I'm just really curious to sort of start off with how you actually got into editing, because truth be told, it's not one of the most obvious roles when people are thinking about careers in the film industry.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this interview. Yeah, my story of getting into editing is quite interesting. I think, like almost every other young, aspiring filmmaker, I got into it and wanted to be a director, and read a number of books, quite a number of books, and a number of them said two really good paths to being a director was either through editing or being an actor. I knew I didn't want to be an actor, so I thought, you know what, I'll just go into editing and just see, just use that path to go into directing, and got into editing and never got out of it. It's as simple as that.
And what kind of mindset do you think it takes to make for a good editor? Because certainly, in my experiences and interactions with filmmakers, you notice that they tend to have certain characteristics that perhaps make them good at particular things, like being a cinematographer, a director, or a writer. So yeah, I'm just curious to hear from your perspective what you think makes for a good editor.
I think a very important mindset to have is one of, it can always be better, because you can work and work and work on the edit, and the more you work on it, and the more you trim out the excess fat and excess, just the excess, the better it is. And so a mindset that I think is quite important is one that it can always be better, and not just settling. Of course, different, circumstances might not allow you, trim as much as you want, especially time and budget. But, once that mindset is there, there's always something else, that doesn't need to be there, or that can be refined in some way, and I think that's quite important to have.
So in a sense, are you saying it's kind of about maybe being a bit of a perfectionist, or someone who's almost not sort of, I wouldn't quite say satisfied, but having this mindset, like you said, of always wanting to push? Do you think there's a danger there with that you can sort of push? Is there a possibility to over edit?
There is a possibility to over edit, and I think that leads me to, I think one of the other things I think is quite important in filmmaking in general, just collaboration. Now, when you do over edit, you can then be reeled back in by your other collaborators who say, oh, okay, now we've lost the story, now we've lost this, and that helps, so being able to have bouncing boards as well, I think, yes, when you mentioned perfectionist, yeah, I spent quite a number of years in my career just never watching stuff that I did, when it went on air or anything, because I would just be cringing throughout, and there was no point watching, because I always thought, oh, I wish I did this thing. I wish this thing, oh gosh, it wasn't just good enough, so it's always there. It will always be with me. And I actually intentionally try to keep that mindset, because sometimes, there's that tendency to want to just, okay, it's okay, it can go, yeah, that's all right, okay, yeah, that's fine. And I'm trying very hard not to slip into that. So yeah, maybe, sometimes it's not very helpful, but I make sure I keep that mindset.
Brilliant. And from an editing perspective, what are the three things that you wish filmmakers took into consideration when shooting their films that would make the process of editing the film a bit easier?
might not be up to 3 or might be more. I'll just think the first thing is just spending more time with the story, just developing the story and the script. I think a lot can be avoided. A lot of, chaos can be avoided just if, producers allowed, a script to evolve and to be ripe enough before we began production. That's one important thing. And of course, another thing is back to what I had mentioned earlier, just not settling. With production, and with many challenges we have in Nigeria, shooting in Nigeria and just with productions in general in Nigeria, there is the tendency and the temptation to want to just settle and say, okay, yeah, this is fine. Yeah, let's just move on to the next phase. But the thing is, it goes on and on and on to the next phase, and it's a domino effect. And when it then gets to the end, that could have been avoided and could have been refined, and it all just blows up really big in our faces. So yeah, maybe it's 2. Oh yeah, maybe the third thing is producers just have higher standards. That would help.
Sorry, can you repeat that? It cut out. Did you say producers should have higher standards? No, that's no problem at all. So the last point that you were making was about producers, and I think you said something along the lines of producers maybe having higher standards. I didn't quite hear it.
Yes, the last thing is producers just having higher standards, because we realized that the producer of the movie, kind of sets the tone for what everyone else follows. And when you probably do not have the highest of standards for the final picture, and maybe if the intention is really just making quick money and just getting it out quickly, it trickles down to everyone else, and then people aren't pushed enough. I think we can push ourselves a bit more, and can get a bit better output in general. Those are my three things.
And just touching on that, what do you think are some of the key misconceptions that directors and producers have about the editing process? Because I think at times when I'm overhearing conversations, particularly by directors, it's like they think that the editing process can just magic all of the flaws.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of misconceptions. Top ones, I think, are, of course, the general, fix it in post. I mean, nowadays, you can fix quite a number of things in post. It's just quite expensive, so, balance it. If you want to fix it in post, then you have to, budget for that, especially time, because post-production takes time. A major leading me to another one misconception is they think, things can be done quicker than usual, and it's a process. And if in certain times processes aren't respected or regarded, something just gets lost on the way. Yeah. Of course, another thing is I think it's changing now, but earlier on, a thing was, oh yeah, I've made a film, yeah, come and edit it. But then that edit it means do the data management, do the edits, do the subtitles, do the color grading, do the sounds, do everything, and that's just, yeah, it's not how it goes. But good thing is things are much better than many years ago, and that gives me hope. That gives me hope that we're starting to do really good work nowadays.
And you referred to the time more than once. I wondered if you could talk us through. I imagine it's probably quite difficult to have like a template, but to sort of deliver high quality work. So if we're talking about work that's going to travel internationally, maybe do the festival circuit, maybe be submitted, for the academies, what kind of editing time would be ideal for someone such as yourself, at the level and standard that you are?
Yeah, like you said, it is quite difficult because different projects have their different requirements and areas that probably need a bit more finessing and just attention. But I would just give, an average. I would say 9 months, is a really good time to have everything, not just editing now, but then the whole post-production, process, done. It might be a bit, long. I mean, 6 months can also happen, again, depending on how, VFX heavy it is, how graphics heavy it is, and how many reshoots have to happen, scheduling and all of that. But yeah, it does take, quite a bit of time, and you can't have a set, template for how long it should take. Really, the material, determines all of that. But I would say, yeah, 6 months, 9 months, 6 to 9 months, is a good time. For the edit aspect of it, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks, just getting the structure of the story, good enough. Again, some have taken much longer. Milkmaid, to be honest, we were working on the Milkmaid since 2018 and only finished in 2020 for various reasons anyway, but we were still tweaking the edit. So it all just varies by project.
No, I can imagine. I mean, when I have spoken to editors, I do get this sense of the process almost kind of having a meditative aspect, where you kind of have to approach it and come to it with certain things. And if the timing is not right, or it needs that time. And then of course things can change in terms of, where the director may want the project to go, or just things that have come out. So I have heard similarly of the sort of 6 to 9 months. Because it's almost like, I suppose, carpentry, where you take your time to chip away at something to get it to perfection. You want it smooth down, you wanted all the finesse. And I suppose it's really understanding that finesse takes time. But I'm curious to know if the genre sort of dictates either the timing or the kind of way in which you might edit. So I imagine that you must have maybe a different approach to a romantic comedy, say, to a horror film.
Yeah, I mean, of course, different genres, dictate different approaches, to both the editing, the timing of the cuts, I mean, going into now, the craft of the editing itself, for example, with comedy, it's really just about timing of the reaction shots, because then, those are the things that, bring out the effect of, whatever, smart things have been said. So with thriller, of course, it's the build up, because then, when the event happens itself, it just happens, but then it's the build up leading to, the actual event, like, these, dagger hitting the person. I'm just trying not to be too gory, but something like that. It's really just building it up to that event. The event is not the highlight, it's more of the build up. Of course, for action, it's really quick cuts, and just making the blood in the audience rush, and just, adrenaline rush. Of course, for romantic comedies, there is a different timing to it as well, because then, you want to pace it, in a way where there are times when information is, excuse me, when information is given out, quickly, but then there are times when you have to let it just flow and let, an actor just act, in certain situations. So yeah, different genres have different challenges. And of course that, goes into different timings for how long they would take. I can't say that an action film, in general would take longer than a romantic comedy, because there are times when the romantic comedy, might require quite a number of reshoots and quite a number of restructures, which would then take even longer than, others. But, just going into the actual editing, that's where, I like, the challenges, with the making the cuts.
Brilliant. And many filmmakers, sometimes for budgetary reasons or otherwise, are inclined to edit their work. I mean, this is something that I'm deadly against. I'm very anti, where possible, filmmakers editing their work. It's one thing to sit and work with the editor, but it's another, editing. But anyway, that's quite a controversial opinion. I wondered why this is unwise in your view, the whole idea that a director would be then editing their work.
I think it goes back to what I had mentioned, much earlier, where I think a film is best when there have been as many hands as possible having touched it, in some way or another. And so when it's limited, the number of people, eyes, or, perspectives that, and lend themselves to the film, I think, sometimes it might not achieve its, highest potential. I believe filmmaking is first and foremost about collaboration. You have to collaborate with as many people as possible. And so even if as the filmmaker, you want to edit your own film, then maybe have a structure where, you have feedback processes, from editors, and other, filmmakers to help to just give a different perspective from the costume designer, from the makeup artist, just give, especially in edit. I always love it when, we have feedback from, like the costume designer, because then they notice things with costume I never saw, for like editing it for 6 weeks, and I never saw that, like the color was, off or something, So I always just feel it's very important to have as many eyes as possible and as many hands touch a film.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I always liken the filmmaking process to a relay race where each runner in that relay race is so important. And it's really, to me, when I sometimes see filmmakers wanting to take on all of these roles, I think to myself, well, it's like the equivalent of one man trying to run a relay race against a team where they have 4 or 5 people.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, it is challenging. And I think at times directors and even producers want to have the control, but ultimately sometimes when they want to have that control and just do everything themselves, it sort of negates from the overall audience experience. It's the audiences that suffer,
Exactly. And I think hopefully we get past that phase of, because it is a phase now where you have producers, wanting to be directors wanting to have all of the credit for, the films. And I think once we can let egos go, away, and you recognize what your major strength is, recognizing what another person's strength is, where you have a weakness, once we collaborate more, we're going to make amazing films. We're still in the phase where, of course, like I mentioned, people are still, jostling for as much credit as possible, for making a film. But once we can get past that, we'll do some amazing work.
I agree. And what are some of the ways that you like to personally work with filmmakers? So what are the things that you think, when a filmmaker is approaching you and wanting you to spend time editing their work can make for a conducive working relationship?
I guess from speaking with the filmmaker and just knowing what the intentions are, it just, I guess ignites, something in me. Of course, sometimes, of course, when, you speak and you kind of get the sense that the intention is really just to get something out, and, make money. It's, it's not very, not very, that, but I love it when I speak beforehand with the filmmaker and just get a sense of what the vision is. And then I know I'm able to add this, I'm able to do this based on what this person has said. I think if we did this and did that, give me like, 2 weeks to just, do this thing and then come back and we work on it together. Those, just help to just, just ignite some, passion in me. It's rare, but yeah.
What do you think? You're not passionate?
I'm very passionate, which is why I'm hardly passionate. Yeah.
And who would you say are some of the unsung and lesser well-known creative practitioners in the Nigerian film industry that you think should maybe be getting their flowers or be better known?
One person I always mention, because I always love working with him, is a director called Tolu Ajayi. I love his vision, and he just also has this young mind, this adventurous mind as well. And then we can just talk about things, and I love working with him. And I think that he's done mostly short films, and he's venturing into features now. And I think once he does quite a number of those, it's going to be amazing work. So I love Tolu Ajayi. Others, oh God, this is bad, Chuka.
Don't worry, we can circle back. And something I wanted to pick up on in the previous remarks that you were making about the working relationship with the filmmaker is, at what stage should a filmmaker ideally either approach you or an editor? What's the kind of ideal to kind of get that magic and to get the relationship juices flowing? When in the sort of cycle of a film production, or even getting the financing or whatever together, is a good time to approach the editor?
Certainly when you have, close to a final draft of the script, that's really a perfect time to approach the editor, because then even as the editor, I can give input on, the script, things that I already see, I envision, okay, if we were to cut it this way, maybe we can add this, to add this conflict, or whatever. It's always very good when you get approached towards, towards completion of, the final draft. That's a perfect time.
Brilliant. And clearly we're talking here in the context of the Eastern Nigerian Film Festival, which is taking place virtually and in person in Enugu in November 2022. Reflecting on the successes of The Lionheart, which was obviously shot entirely in the East, and even with The Milkmaid, that was shot, from my understanding, entirely sort of, I think, Middle Belt or in the North. What do you think are some of the benefits of taking productions outside of Lagos? Because I think at times it's like, that's like a default position, to shoot in Lagos. And I know some of that may be convenience and costs and things, but, it's interesting to see how these two particular titles, so Lionheart and The Milkmaid, really did something on screen very different. And they were, shot in parts of Nigeria that don't necessarily get that airplay.
Yeah. The major advantage, so it's just the scenery. It's beautiful. Nigeria is beautiful, but then we don't get to showcase it much. Not saying Lagos isn't beautiful, even though Lagos isn't beautiful, but Nigeria it has so much beauty. You mentioned the Middle Belt, even in the eastern parts of Nigeria. I've been to most states in Nigeria, and I've seen just so much beauty that we can start to show and showcase, so that we reignite some passion for the country and travel in interstate in Nigeria. Of course, we know that security is a challenge, but with time, I think that more and more people are also opening up to that possibility of showcasing Nigeria for also not just for showing the conflicts your characters face, but also just rekindling that sense of patriotism in Nigerians, even in a subtle way, by just showing the beauty.
I completely agree. I mean, I very much feel that we haven't really seen Nigeria. What we see is the interior of the houses.
Yeah.
In terms of the actual landscape, I mean, people don't even realize the kind of wildlife that is in Nigeria.
Yeah.
There's so much in the terrain that has not really had any level of exposure. So I agree. There's a great deal of potential. So what are some of the tips that you might give to emerging editors who are watching this? So maybe, folk who are kind of working on their own and wanting to kind of make waves, wanting to sort of understand more. Is there anything that you would recommend, either around them sort of staying abreast of like their skills, or networking, or just, operating generally in the Nigerian space?
Sorry, Nadia, I missed half of the first half of the question.
No, that's fine. So I was just asking what tips that you might give to emerging editors in Nigeria who are watching this and kind of wanting to know how they can make their way. I'm thinking particularly of individuals who might be just working, as one-man bands, and so they're not part of a group. Maybe they don't really attend festivals. So what kind of tips might you give them to sort of progress in their career?
Yeah, tips. Firstly, watch films, just watch films and analyze films, and just see how, they were made. Read books. In general, what I'm saying is educate yourself and just, expand your horizon. There's this I'm saying from this photographer, and I think he said something like, if all we do is just look within, our can't remember what he said, but look within our sphere, which is just in editing, we then just become the artistic equivalent of, sorry, I've lost my train of thought, but we then become the artistic equivalent of, just like a community that is just feeding off itself alone. But then there's so much more that you can get from outside, from photography, get from, of course, cinematography, from, lighting, from sound, so just explore as much as you can, and knowing that somehow that in your craft of editing. Of course, try to find, a mentor where you can, because, it also helps to just keep you on your toes, just, keep you active and just keep you pushing. You have to find things that will help to push you. Like I mentioned earlier, there is that tendency to want to settle. that should be like the last thing that you want to do. Never settle, just keep on trying to just push the envelope. And great things always happen when we push.
Of course they do. And very lastly, in the vein of pushing, what do you think will make for a world-class Nigerian film? What is the Nigerian film of your dreams?
The Nigerian film of my dreams is the one where, a lot of the top producers have collaborated to make a film. A lot of the top, I guess, cinematographers, editors and the rest, where we actually collaborate, and there isn't, productions here and there, made in everyone's different silos. Once we can collaborate to put egos aside, amazing work will happen. And I think gradually we're getting there. So I don't know what story it is or what it is. I just know that whatever is done with collaboration of all the brilliant minds that we have in the film industry, it will be amazing.
And what genre do you think that film is likely to be?
That's a very interesting one. Historical.
You think it'll be a period piece?
I think we have a rich history that we can dig in. Yeah, I think so. Okay. Maybe this is just me being sentimental to that, but I do think so.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, Chuka. I'm very much looking forward to this being out in the world and people being able to engage and, probably hitting you up on social media and being in touch. But keep up the great work. You're a real champion in terms of all of what you're doing for the Nigerian film industry. And yeah, we look forward to seeing and hearing more. Thank you so much.